I agreed to the date as a joke. That's the part that makes me sound like an idiot now, but at the time it felt harmless. Temporary. Like saying yes to something you never expect to take seriously. Grant wasn't even supposed to be my type. We met through a mutual friend at a small house party, one of those cramped apartments where the music is slightly too loud and everyone's pretending they're having more fun than they actually are. I was leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling my phone, already thinking about leaving when he walked in. Not in a dramatic way. No slow motion moment. Just there. Tall. Relaxed. The kind of guy who looked like he belonged anywhere without trying. He laughed easily, talked to everyone, moved through the room like it was his space. I noticed him. Of course I did. But noticing someone and being interested are two different things. At some point, we ended up standing next to each other while waiting for drinks. "You look like you're planning your escape," he said, glancing at my phone. I huffed a quiet laugh. "Is it that obvious?" "Painfully. I give it another 10 minutes," I said. "Then I'm gone." He smiled at that. "Shame. I just got here. Your timing's terrible." "Or perfect," he countered. "Gives me 10 minutes to convince you to stay." I raised an eyebrow. Confident. Realistic. That made me look at him properly. "Grant." That's when he introduced himself. "Dylan," I replied. We talked. Not about anything important. Just the usual surface-level stuff: work, where we lived, how we both kind of hated parties like this, but kept showing up anyway. It was easy. Too easy, actually. Which is probably why I didn't take it seriously. At one point, he leaned casually against the counter and said, "Let me take you out." I blinked. "You just met me." "Yeah," he said. "And I like what I've seen so far." I laughed. "You don't know anything about me." "Then I'll fix that." There was no hesitation in him. No awkwardness. No overthinking. Just direct. And for some reason, that made me want to mess with him a little. "All right," I said, shrugging. "Sure." "Sure," he repeated, amused. "That's the energy I'm getting. It's a date, not a life decision." He grinned. "I'll take it." I gave him my number like it didn't matter. Because to me, it didn't. At least, not yet. The next day, he actually texted. Not immediately. Not in that overeager way that kills the vibe. Just a simple message in the afternoon. "Grant." "So, was that a real yes or a polite party yes?" I stared at it longer than I should have. "Me, depends. Are you actually interesting outside a kitchen conversation?" "Grant." That sounds like a challenge. "Me, it is." There was a pause. Then, "Grant, dinner. Friday. I'll prove it." I almost didn't reply. That's the part one keep coming back to. I could have ignored it. Let it fade out like most of these things do. No effort. No consequences. Instead, I typed, "Me, fine. But if it's boring, I'm leaving early." "Grant." I wouldn't expect anything less. I smirked at my phone, already treating the whole thing like a game. That was my first mistake. Friday came faster than I expected. All week, I didn't think about it much. Work was busy. Life was normal. Grant was just a name in my messages. We texted a little. Nothing deep. Just enough to keep things moving. But Friday evening, standing in front of my closet, I caught myself hesitating. Which was weird. Because I didn't care. Right? I threw on something simple. Nothing too effort-heavy. I wasn't trying to impress him. That's what I told myself. When I got to the restaurant, he was already there. Of course he was. Sitting by the window, looking completely at ease, like he hadn't checked the time 5 times or wondered if I'd cancel last minute. He looked up when I walked in and smiled. Not the polite kind. The kind that lands. "Dylan," he said, standing up. "You showed up." "Barely," I replied, pulling out my chair. "You're on thin ice." He laughed. "Good. I work better under pressure." I sat down, trying to ignore the way my chest felt slightly off. Not nervous, just aware. "You always this difficult?" he asked. "Only when I don't care." That should have thrown him off. It didn't. "Then I guess I'll have to change that," he said casually. I rolled my eyes, but I could feel it, that shift. Something about him wasn't playing along the way I expected. Most guys would either try too hard or back off. Grant did neither. And that made things interesting. Dinner started like any other date. Small talk. Background noise. The usual rhythm of two people figuring each other out. But somewhere between the drinks arriving and the main course, it changed. Not dramatically. Subtly. "You're not really here, are you?" he said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" He leaned back slightly, studying me. "You agreed to this for fun. Or boredom. Not because you actually wanted to be here." I stared at him. That wasn't supposed to be obvious. You always analyze people like this? I asked. Only when they're pretending. I let out a short laugh. And what exactly am I pretending? That you don't care. The words landed heavier than they should have. I crossed my arms. Maybe I don't. Maybe, he said. But you still showed up. That shut me up for a second. Because he wasn't wrong. And I didn't like that. I told you. I said finally. I was curious. About me? I hesitated. Maybe. He smiled slightly. Not smug. Not victorious. Just knowing. And that's when I felt it for the first time. Regret. Not big. Not overwhelming. Just a small, uncomfortable thought settling in the back of my mind. This wasn't going to stay a joke. The rest of the night went too well. That's the problem. If it had been awkward, boring, forgettable, I would have left, laughed about it later, moved on. But it wasn't. We talked for hours. Real conversations. Not surface level. Not forced. He listened. Actually listened. Asked questions that made me think before answering. At one point, I caught myself forgetting this was supposed to be casual. Forgetting that I didn't care. And that scared me a little. When we finally stepped outside, the air was cool, the city quieter than usual. He walked beside me, hands in his pockets. So, he said, glancing over, still planning to leave early? I exhaled slowly. I guess you passed. High praise. Don't get used to it. He smiled. We stopped at the corner where our paths split. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just loaded. I had a good time, he said. I nodded. Yeah, me too. And I meant it. That was the second mistake. Because now, it wasn't a joke anymore. And I could already feel it. Something starting that I hadn't planned for. Something I wasn't sure I could control. And the worst part? I wasn't walking away. I should have ended it after that night. That would have been the smart move. Keep it as a good date. A surprising one. Something I could look back on and think, huh, that was nice, without it turning into anything complicated. Instead, I texted him the next day. Not even on purpose. It was one of those impulsive moments where your brain hasn't caught up yet. Me, you got lucky. I usually don't stay that long. The reply came quicker than I expected. Grant, I know. I could tell you were trying to leave at least 3 times. I smiled despite myself. Me, I was. Grant. And yet, I stared at the screen for a second. Me, don't read into it. There was a pause. Then, Grant, too late. That should have annoyed me. Instead, it did something worse. It made me want to see him again. The second time wasn't supposed to be a date. That's how I justified it. We met for coffee. Middle of the day. Casual. Low stakes. No pressure. At least, that's what I told myself walking there. Grant was already outside when I arrived, leaning against the wall, sunglasses pushed up into his hair. Twice in a row, he said when he saw me. I'm starting to think you like me. Don't get ahead of yourself, I replied. But there was no edge to it this time. That difference didn't go unnoticed. Right, he said lightly. Just curiosity. Exactly. We went inside. And again it was easy. Too easy. That same rhythm from the first night slipped right back into place like it had been waiting for us. We talked about real things this time. Not just surface-level stuff. Family. Plans. The kind of questions that usually take weeks to get to. At one point, he asked, "What do you actually want?" I frowned. From what? Life. Relationships. Whatever. I leaned back in my chair, thinking. I don't know, I admitted. Nothing complicated. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I don't think anyone wants complicated. I looked at him. And you? He didn't answer right away. Something real, he said finally. That word sat between us. Real. I didn't like how much it stuck with me. After that, it became a pattern. We didn't label anything. Didn't talk about what we were doing. But we kept seeing each other. Dinner turned into walks. Walks turned into late-night conversations. Late nights turned into this quiet, steady presence in each other's lives. And somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending it was a joke. But I didn't admit it either. That was the problem. One night, we were sitting in his car, parked outside my place. We'd just come back from a movie we barely paid attention to. The engine was off, but neither of us moved. You do this a lot, he asked. Do what? Stay, he said. Even when you could leave. I glanced at him. Is that a complaint? No, he said. Just an observation. I looked away out the window. I leave when I need to. And when is that? He asked quietly. I hesitated. I don't know. He nodded, like that confirmed something for him. That's what I thought. There was a weight to the silence that followed. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. Dylan, he said after a moment. Yeah. What are we doing? There it was. The question I'd been avoiding. I exhaled slowly. We're hanging out. He let out a soft breath, almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Right, he said. Just hanging out. I could hear it. The shift. And instead of fixing it, I doubled down. You said you didn't want complicated. I don't, he replied. But I also don't want something that feels like it doesn't matter. That hit harder than I expected. This matters, I said quickly. Then say that. I opened my mouth. And nothing came out. Because saying it would mean admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. Not to him. Not to myself. He looked at me for a long second. Then nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. Yeah, he murmured. That's what I was afraid of. Something tightened in my chest. Grant. It's fine, he cut in gently. I just needed to know where you're at. I told you. No, he said quietly. You didn't. Silence. Heavy this time. I felt it slipping. Whatever this was easy, natural, unspoken, it was starting to crack. And I didn't know how to fix it without changing everything. I didn't plan this, I said finally. He looked at me. Plan what? Any of it. His expression softened slightly. I know. I said yes as a joke, I admitted. I didn't think it would turn into this. This, he repeated. I gestured vaguely between us. Whatever this is. He held my gaze. And now? I swallowed. Now I don't know what I'm doing. That was the most honest thing I'd said. He studied me for a moment. Then nodded. Okay, he said. Just okay. No pressure. No ultimatum. And somehow, that made it worse. Okay. I echoed. Yeah, he said. You're figuring it out. And you're just fine with that? He gave a small shrug. I don't really have a choice. That didn't sit right. You could walk away, I said. He smiled faintly. I could. But you won't. It wasn't a question. He looked at me for a long second. No, he admitted. That did something to me. Something dangerous. Because now I knew. He was already in deeper than I was willing to admit I was. And instead of pulling back, I stayed. We sat there a little longer. Neither of us saying what we were both thinking. Then I reached for the door handle. I should go, I said. Yeah, he replied quietly. I paused. Something pulled at me. I turned back. Hey. He looked at me. I meant it, I said. This matters. His expression shifted. Softened. But not completely. Then don't treat it like it doesn't, he said. I nodded. Then I got out of the car. Walking up to my apartment, I felt it clearly for the first time. That weight. That realization. I hadn't just agreed to a date as a joke. I had stepped into something real. And now? Now I was the one holding it at arm's length. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared more than I wanted to. And I had no idea what to do with that. That night, my phone buzzed. Grant, get inside safe? I stared at the message. Then typed. Mia? A pause. Then, Grant. Good. That was it. No jokes. No flirting. Just simple. And somehow, that felt heavier than anything else. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I'd said, everything I hadn't said, and one thought kept repeating in my head. This is where it goes wrong. Not because of him, but because of me. And for the first time since this started, I actually considered walking away. Not because I didn't want him, but because I wasn't sure I could handle wanting him this much. I didn't walk away. That's the simplest way to put it. All those thoughts about distance, about pulling back before it got worse, they stayed in my head. They sounded smart, logical, safe, but I didn't act on them. Instead, I texted him the next morning like nothing had shifted. Me, you always overthink things this much? His reply took a little longer this time. Grant, only when they matter. I stared at that, then locked my phone, because I didn't have a response that wouldn't make things more real than I was ready for. We still saw each other. That didn't change, but something underneath it had. There was this awareness now. Before, everything had felt light, unspoken, like we were both floating just above the surface of something deeper without acknowledging it. Now we both knew it was there, and I could tell Grant felt it too. He didn't push, didn't bring up that conversation again. But there were moments, small ones, where I could see it in his eyes. That question still sitting there, unanswered. What are we doing? And every time, I avoided it. A few days later, we ended up back at his place. It wasn't planned. We had grabbed dinner, walked longer than usual, talking about random things, music, old habits, stupid childhood stories. It felt normal again, comfortable, like maybe I had imagined the tension, until we got inside. His apartment was quiet, dimly lit, the city noise muted behind closed windows. He tossed his keys on the counter, glancing back at me. You want something to drink? He asked. Sure. He handed me a glass of water, then leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me in that way he did like he was trying to read something I wasn't saying. What? I asked. Nothing. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Thinking too much. He smiled slightly. You're one to talk. I exhaled, shaking my head. I'm not in the mood for another serious conversation. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. That quiet stretched between us again. Not hostile, just full. Dylan, he said after a moment. I already knew I wasn't going to like whatever came next. Yeah, I'm trying not to push you. I looked at him. I noticed. But you're making it hard, he added. That caught me off guard. How? Because I don't know where I stand, he said simply. There it was again. Not aggressive, not demanding, just honest. And somehow, that made it harder to deflect. You stand, I started, then stopped. Because I didn't know how to finish that sentence without either lying or saying too much. He waited, didn't interrupt, didn't fill the silence. Just let me sit in it. I like being with you, I said finally. I know, he replied. That's not the problem. I frowned. Then what is? You act like this could disappear tomorrow and you'd be fine. That hit. Because it wasn't true. But I had been acting like it was. I wouldn't be fine, I said quietly. His expression shifted just slightly. Then why pretend you would? I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. Because I didn't expect this, I admitted. I didn't expect you. He pushed off the counter, stepping a little closer. And that's a bad thing? No, I said quickly. It's just a lot. How? I hesitated. Because explaining it meant exposing something I'd been avoiding. It felt easy at first, I said, like something I could walk away from whenever I wanted. And now? I looked at him. Now it doesn't. That changed the air between us. Not dramatically, but enough. Grant exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for a while. Okay, he said. That word again. Simple. Steady. But this time, it didn't feel dismissive. It felt like he was adjusting, meeting me where I was. And that made something twist in my chest. You're too patient, I muttered. He huffed a quiet laugh. You say that like it's a flaw. It is, I said. With me, at least. Why? Because you deserve someone who knows what they want. He looked at me for a long moment. I do know what I want, he said. I swallowed. Yeah, I murmured. That's the problem. Silence again. But different this time. More fragile. More real. You regret saying yes? He asked suddenly. The question hit harder than anything else. Because it went all the way back to the beginning. That stupid, casual moment in a crowded kitchen. I shook my head. No, not even a hesitation. That surprised both of us. Then what do you regret? He asked quietly. I let out a slow breath, not taking it seriously from the start. His eyes stayed on mine. Because now it matters, I said. And there it was. Out loud. No deflection. No jokes. Just the truth. Grant stepped closer. Not rushing. Not overwhelming. Just enough to close the distance between us. That's all I've been asking for, he said softly. I know. I could feel it now, that pull. Stronger than before. No longer something I could brush off. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he reached for my hand. Slow. Careful. Like he was still giving me time to pull away. I didn't. Our fingers laced together naturally. And something in my chest settled and tightened at the same time. This doesn't feel like a joke anymore, he said. No, I replied quietly. It really doesn't. We stood there like that longer than we probably should have. No distractions. No noise. Just the weight of what this had become. I'm not asking you to have everything figured out, he said. I know. I just need you to stop acting like this is nothing. I nodded. I can do that. He searched my face, like he was making sure I meant it. I did. At least, I thought I did. Because even in that moment, standing there, holding his hand, finally admitting this mattered, there was still a part of me that felt it. That fear. That quiet, creeping thought. What if I can't give him what he wants? And I think, deep down, that's when I knew. This wasn't just going to be complicated. It was going to hurt. After that night, things changed. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way. No big declarations. No sudden shift into something clearly defined. It was quieter than that. But it was real. I stopped pretending. That was the first thing. No more jokes about leaving early. No more acting like this was temporary, like I could walk away whenever I wanted without feeling it. Because I couldn't. And Grant knew it. We started seeing each other more openly. Not in some public, labeled way, but in the way we moved around each other. More natural. More certain. I stayed longer. He didn't have to ask. He texted less cautiously. I replied without overthinking every word. And for a while, it felt right. Like maybe I had been overcomplicating everything. Like maybe all I needed to do was let it happen. But that feeling didn't last. Because reality doesn't just disappear when you decide to ignore it. It hit me one night when we were out with his friends. It wasn't even a big group. Just 4 of them, sitting around a table at a bar, laughing, talking over each other. Grant had invited me casually. "You'll like them," he said. And I went. Because I wanted to. That part was real. They were exactly what I expected. Easygoing. Loud in a comfortable way. The kind of people who had known each other long enough to not filter anything. They welcomed me without question. No awkwardness. No interrogation. Just normal. And Grant fit perfectly into that space. That was the first thing I noticed. How natural he was with them. How grounded. Like this was his world. At some point, one of his friends asked, "So how do you guys know each other?" Grant didn't hesitate. "Met at a party," he said. I nodded. "Yeah, that checks out." Another guy laughed. "Grant talks to everyone." "Not everyone," Grant said, glancing at me. It was small, subtle, but it was there. And for a second, something in my chest warmed. The night went on. Drinks. Stories. That easy rhythm of conversation where you don't have to think too much. And I should have felt comfortable. I almost did. But then I started noticing things. Not anything obvious. Just small details. Grant introducing me by name, but nothing more. The way we sat close, but not too close. The way there was this invisible line neither of us crossed in front of them. It wasn't hiding. Not exactly. But it wasn't clear either. And that uncertainty started to settle in my chest. Later, when we stepped outside for some air, I felt it fully. That discomfort. That question I hadn't asked yet. "You okay?" Grant asked. "Yeah," I said automatically. He gave me a look. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Say you're fine when you're not." I exhaled slowly. It was weird. He frowned slightly. "What was?" I hesitated. Then just said it. "Us." He didn't react right away. Just watched me, waiting for me to explain. "I don't know what we are in your life," I admitted. "Out there." His expression shifted. Not defensive. Just careful. "They know I like you," he said. "That's not the same as knowing what I am to you." The second the words left my mouth, I knew I couldn't take them back. Grant looked away for a moment, jaw tightening slightly. "I wasn't trying to make you feel like that," he said. "I know," I replied quickly. "I'm not saying you were." "Then what are you saying?" I swallowed. "I don't want to guess where I stand." Silence. Not angry, but heavy. "I told you I want something real," he said. "You did. And I'm here with you." "I know." "Then why does it feel like you don't trust that?" That hit deeper than I expected. "Because I didn't trust it at the start," I admitted. "And now I don't know if I missed the point where it became real for you." His eyes locked on mine. "It was real from the beginning." I shook my head slightly. "Not for me." That was the difference. That gap between us. The one I had created without realizing how much it would matter later. "I'm catching up," I said quietly. Grant exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "And I'm trying to be patient," he replied. "I know. But you keep acting like I might disappear." I frowned. "I don't." "You do," he cut in gently. "You hold back just enough to protect yourself." That landed exactly where it was supposed to. Because he wasn't wrong. "I just don't want to get this wrong," I said. "You already are," he replied. Not harsh. Not angry. Just honest. Silence stretched between us again. The city noise filling the space neither of us knew how to close. "I need to know you're actually in this," he said after a moment. "I am." "Then stop treating it like it's temporary." I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. He wasn't unsure. He wasn't halfway in. He was already there. And I wasn't. Not fully. Not yet. "I'm trying," I said. "I know," he replied. But it didn't sound like enough. We stood there for a few more seconds. Then he nodded toward the door. "They're probably wondering where we went." "Yeah." Neither of us moved right away. "Dylan," he said. "Yeah. I don't regret this." My chest tightened. Me neither. And that was true. Even now. Especially now. But as we walked back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted again. Not broken. Not yet. But strained. Because this wasn't about whether we liked each other anymore. That part was obvious. This was about timing. About expectations. About whether I could meet him where he already was. Or if I was always going to be just a step behind. And for the first time, I started to worry that being a step behind might be enough to lose him. After that night, I tried to fix it. Not with some big gesture or dramatic speech, just small things. Being more present. Saying what I actually meant instead of dodging it. Letting myself stay in moments instead of constantly preparing an exit. And for a while, it worked. We found that rhythm again. The easy one. The one that made everything feel simple, even when it wasn't. One evening, we ended up walking through the city with no real destination. Just moving. Talking about nothing important. At some point, our hands brushed. And this time, neither of us pulled away. I felt him glance at me. "You still overthinking everything?" he asked. "Less," I admitted. "That's progress. Don't get used to it." He smiled. Too late. It felt normal. That's what scared me. Because normal meant I was getting used to him. And getting used to him meant losing him would hurt a lot more. That thought followed me more often now. In quiet moments. When I was alone. When I wasn't distracted by his voice or his presence or the way everything felt easier when he was around. I started noticing how much space he took up in my life. How naturally he had slipped into it. And how little space I had actually given him in return. Not intentionally, but it was there. That imbalance. A few days later, he came over to my place. We ordered food, sat on the floor, talking the way we always did when everything felt uncomplicated. At one point, he leaned back against the couch, looking at me with that same quiet focus. "You're different this week," he said. I frowned slightly. Different how? Less guarded. I let out a small breath. "I'm trying. I can tell." That should have felt like relief. Instead, it made something tighten in my chest. "Why does that sound like you're still worried?" he asked. I hesitated. Because I didn't want to say it. But I also didn't want to keep pretending. "I don't know if I'm too late," I admitted. His brow furrowed. "Too late for what?" "For you." That landed heavier than I expected. Grant sat up slightly, studying me. "You think there's a deadline on this?" "No," I said. "But I think you've been sure for longer than I have. And that bothers you." "Yes." "Why?" "Because it meant I was the one who could ruin this. Because it meant I was the weak point. Because it meant if this fell apart, it would probably be because of me." "I don't want to mess this up," I said quietly. He held my gaze. "You're not messing it up by taking your time," he said. "It feels like I am." "Dylan," he said gently, "the only thing that messes this up is not being honest." I looked down at my hands, at the space between us, then back at him. "I think about you when you're not around," I said. The words felt heavier than they should have. "I notice when you don't text." His expression softened. "I replay things you say." I exhaled slowly. "And I hate that I didn't take you seriously at the start, because now it feels like I'm trying to catch something that's already moving." Silence. But not the bad kind. Grant leaned forward slightly. "You're not chasing me," he said. "It feels like I am." "That's because you finally care." That word again. Care. Simple. But loaded. "I do," I admitted. No hesitation this time. No joke attached. Just truth. He nodded, like he'd been waiting for that. Not pushing. Not rushing. Just there. "Then stop acting like that's a problem," he said. I let out a quiet laugh. "I don't know how to do that." "Yeah," he said. "You do." I shook my head. "I'm serious." "I know," he replied. "And I'm telling you, you don't have to overcomplicate it." "That's easy for you to say." "Why?" "Because you've been sure from the beginning." He paused, then said something I didn't expect. "I wasn't sure," he said. I frowned. "What?" "I just didn't fight it." That stopped me. "I felt it early," he continued. "Yeah, but that doesn't mean I had everything figured out." He leaned back slightly. "I just decided it was worth finding out." I stared at him. Because that was the difference. I had been calculating. He had been choosing. And suddenly, it made sense why everything felt so uneven. "I've been trying to control it," I said slowly. "Yeah," he replied. "I know. And you haven't." "No." Silence again. But clearer this time. "I don't want to control it anymore," I said. His eyes stayed on mine. "Then don't." It sounded simple. Too simple. But maybe that was the point. I shifted closer. Not dramatically. Just enough to close that space that always seemed to exist between us. "This still scares me," I admitted. "It should," he said. "It means it matters." I nodded. Then, after a second, "I'm in this," I said. Fully. Clearly. No hesitation. Grant didn't react immediately. Just watched me. Like he was making sure I wasn't going to take it back. "I know," he said quietly. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was behind anymore. It felt like I had finally caught up. But what I didn't realize yet was that catching up doesn't erase everything that came before. And sometimes, the way something starts still matters later. For a while, everything felt steady. Not perfect, not effortless, but real in a way that didn't scare me as much anymore. I stopped holding back. That was the biggest shift. I didn't second-guess every message. Didn't hesitate before reaching for his hand. Didn't treat every moment like it could disappear if I got too comfortable. Because I was already comfortable. And for once, I let that be enough. Grant noticed. Of course he did. "You feel different," he said one night, sitting beside me on the floor of my apartment, backs against the couch. I glanced at him. "You said that before." "Yeah," he nodded. "But this is more." "More what?" "More here," he said simply. I looked down at our hands resting next to each other. I admitted. He smiled slightly. Not surprised. Just satisfied. And for a while, that was enough. Until it wasn't. It started small. Almost nothing. The kind of thing you wouldn't notice if you weren't already paying too much attention. He texted a little less. Not a lot. Just enough for me to notice. Our plans became less certain. Not canceled. Just flexible. "Let's see how the day goes. I might be busy later. I'll let you know." Normal things. Reasonable things. Things that shouldn't have bothered me. But they did. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. That this was exactly the kind of behavior that used to be mine. That maybe this was just balance. But it didn't feel like balance. It felt like distance. And I didn't know why. One evening, I was sitting on my couch, staring at my phone longer than I wanted to admit. He hadn't replied in a couple hours. Not unusual, but not usual either. I typed a message. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I threw my phone aside. Because I hated that feeling. That waiting. That uncertainty. And that's when it hit me. This is what he felt before. That realization didn't calm me down. It made it worse. Because now I understood it. Too well. When he finally replied, it was casual. "Grant, sorry, long day. You good?" I stared at the message. At how normal it looked. How simple. And yet, it didn't feel the same. "Me, yeah?" I sent it before I could overthink it. A few seconds later. "Grant, I can come by later if you want." If you want. That phrasing stuck. Before, it had felt like he wanted to. Now it felt like an option. And I didn't know if that difference was real. Or just in my head. "Yeah," I typed. He came over an hour later. Same as always. Same knock. Same quiet, "Hey," when I opened the door. But something felt off. Not distant. Not cold. Just slightly out of sync. We sat down, started talking like usual. But I could feel it. That space again. Not physical. Something else. "You okay?" he asked after a while. I almost said yes. Out of habit. Then stopped. "I don't know," I admitted. He watched me carefully. "What's going on?" I hesitated. Because I didn't want to sound like I was overreacting. Didn't want to turn something small into something bigger. But it didn't feel small. "You feel different," I said. His expression didn't change. That was the first sign. "Different how?" he asked. I struggled to explain it. "Less here," I said finally. Silence. Not immediate denial. Not confusion. Just quiet. And that scared me more than anything. "Grant," I said. He exhaled slowly, looking down at his hands. "I've been thinking," he said. That sentence alone made my chest tighten. "About what?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "About how this started." Everything in me stilled. "What about it?" He looked up at me. And for the first time in a long time. He didn't look sure. "You didn't take me seriously," he said. The words were calm. But they landed heavy. "I know," I replied quietly. "And I told myself that was fine," he continued. "That you'd catch up." "I did." "You did," he nodded. "But I think something stuck with me." That twist in my chest tightened. "Like what?" He hesitated. Then said it. "Like I was the one who cared first." I swallowed. "And now?" I asked. He looked at me. Really looked. "Now I don't know if I trust that you won't pull back again." That hit harder than anything else. "I'm not," I said quickly. "I told you I'm in this." "I know you said that," he replied. Said. Not felt. "I mean it," I insisted. He nodded. "But not fully." "That's the problem," he said quietly. "I think you do mean it." "Then what?" "But I've already been where you are now," he added. "And I remember what it felt like." Silence. "You're scared," he continued. "And when you get scared, you step back." I opened my mouth. Then closed it. Because he wasn't wrong. "I'm not stepping back now," I said. "You're not," he agreed. "But I don't know if that will last." That was it. That was the crack. Not in what we had, but in how he saw it. "I'm here," I said again, softer this time. He looked at me. "I know," he said. And somehow, that didn't feel like enough anymore. Because now, It wasn't just about me catching up. It was about whether I had caught up too late. And for the first time, I felt it clearly. That shift. The roles had changed. And now, I was the one trying to prove something. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Grant had stayed for a while after that conversation. We didn't argue. That was the worst part. No raised voices. No accusations. Just quiet. Careful words. Me trying to explain. Him trying to understand. Both of us feeling something shift that neither of us knew how to stop. At some point, he stood up. I should go, he said. That felt wrong. He used to stay. Yeah. I replied, even though I didn't want him to leave. We walked to the door together. No tension. No distance. Just something missing. He paused before leaving. Looked at me like he wanted to say something else. Then didn't. Good night, Dylan. Good night. And then he was gone. The silence after that felt heavier than anything we had said. I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at nothing. Replaying everything. Not just tonight. Everything. The party. The joke. The way I said yes like it didn't matter. And suddenly, I hated that version of myself. Because I could see it now. Clear as anything. That moment had shaped everything that came after. Not because Grant held it against me, but because it changed how he trusted what we had. And now I was paying for that. The next few days were strange. We still talked. Still texted. Still saw each other. But it felt different. Not distant. Not broken. Just careful. Like we were both aware of something fragile between us. Something that could shift too far if we pushed it wrong. And I didn't know how to fix it. Because this wasn't something I could solve by just saying the right thing. It wasn't about words anymore. It was about time. About consistency. About proving something that should have been clear from the start. And I didn't know if I had enough time to do that. A few nights later, I asked him to meet. Not casually. Not if you're free. I just said, me, can you come over? I need to talk to you. He replied almost immediately. Grant, yeah, I'll be there. That alone told me something. He still showed up. He always had. When he walked in, it felt like everything slowed down. Same look. Same presence. But I could see it now. That hesitation behind his eyes. Hey, he said. Hey. We didn't sit right away. Just stood there for a second. Like neither of us knew how to start. I've been thinking, I said. He let out a quiet breath. Yeah, me too. I don't like how this feels, I admitted. Me neither. That helped. A little. At the start, I said slowly. I treated this like it didn't matter. He didn't interrupt. Didn't argue. Just listened. And I get why that stuck with you, I continued. I get why it made you feel like you cared more. His jaw tightened slightly. But he nodded. I can't change that, I said. No, he agreed quietly. But I can tell you what's real now. That got his attention. I stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. I don't see this as something temporary, I said. I don't see you as something I can walk away from. His eyes stayed on mine. I think about you all the time, I added. Not in a casual way. Not in a this is fun way. My voice steadied. In a way that actually scares me. That was the truth. The full version. I didn't feel that at the beginning, I said. But I feel it now. Silence. Not empty. Just heavy with everything I wasn't holding back anymore. I know I was behind, I said. I know you got there first. He swallowed slightly. But I'm here now, I finished. And I'm not going anywhere. For a second, nothing happened. Then he looked away. Just briefly. Like he needed a second to process it. When he looked back, something had shifted. Not fixed, but softer. You mean that? He asked. Yeah, I said. No hesitation. He nodded slowly. I believe you, he said. That should have felt like relief. But there was something else in his voice. Something careful. Then what's wrong? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Then said it. I just wish I didn't have to catch up to you now. That landed deeper than anything else. Because that's exactly how I had felt before. And now, it was his turn. I know, I said. Silence again. Then he stepped closer. Not all the way. Just enough to close most of the distance. I don't want to walk away, he said. My chest tightened. Then don't. I'm not planning to, he replied. But he didn't sound certain. And that was the problem. We were both here. Both trying. Both wanting the same thing. But we weren't in the same place anymore. Not quite. And for the first time, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Sometimes, wanting each other isn't the hardest part. Timing is. And timing doesn't always fix itself. Just because you finally get it right. After that night, nothing ended. And somehow, that made it harder. Because it would have been easier if one of us had just said it. This isn't working. We're done. A clean break. A clear line. Instead, we stayed. Not out of habit, not out of convenience, because neither of us wanted to lose what we had, but wanting something and knowing how to keep it. Those are two very different things. The next few weeks felt like walking on something unstable. Not breaking, not falling, just shifting. We still saw each other, still talked, still had moments where everything felt like it used to. But underneath it, there was that awareness, that hesitation, like we were both trying not to trigger something we couldn't undo. And the worst part? We both knew exactly where it had started. With me. One evening, we were sitting in silence at my place. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. Grant was leaning back, staring at the ceiling. I was watching him, trying to read something I couldn't quite reach anymore. "You ever wish we started differently?" he asked suddenly. There it was. I exhaled slowly. "Yeah." He nodded, like he expected that. "I think we'd be in a different place," he said. "We are in a place," I replied. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But not the same one." That hurt. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. "I hate that I made it feel like you mattered less at the beginning," I said. "You didn't make me feel like I mattered less," he replied. I frowned slightly. "You made me feel like I was temporary." That hit deeper than anything else. Because that's exactly what I had done. "I don't see you that way," I said. "I know," he replied. Present tense. Now. "But the past didn't just disappear because I changed. I just needed that earlier," he added. Silence. And there it was. Not anger. Not blame. Just timing. We sat there for a while longer. Neither of us trying to fix it anymore. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like something we could fix with effort. "I still care about you," he said. My chest tightened. "I know. I really do." "I know," I repeated. He looked at me then, and there was no confusion in his eyes anymore. Just clarity. "I just don't feel steady in this," he said. That word again. Steady. The thing I had only recently found. And he had already started to lose. "I want to give you that," I said. "I believe that," he replied. But he didn't sound convinced it was enough. And that's when I understood. This wasn't about effort anymore. It was about how something started. About the first impression that never fully went away. About the fact that I had treated something real like it was temporary. And now he couldn't unfeel that, even if he wanted to. "So what are we doing?" I asked quietly. The same question. Full circle. This time. He answered. "I think we're trying to hold on to something that didn't grow the same way for both of us." That was it. No drama. No explosion. Just truth. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said. Silence. Then he stood up. Not abruptly. Not cold. Just decided. "I don't regret you," he said. I looked up at him. "I don't regret you either." And that was the most honest part of all of it. Because I didn't. Even now. Especially now. He hesitated for a second, then stepped closer and pulled me into a hug. It wasn't rushed. Not desperate. Just real. "We just met at the wrong moment," he said quietly. I closed my eyes for a second. "Yeah," I replied. And for once, I didn't argue with that. When he left, it didn't feel like something had shattered. It felt like something had slipped. Like we had both held on to it as long as we could. But it wasn't built to last the way we needed it to. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. Same place where I had overthought everything at the start. Same place where I had finally admitted it mattered. And now, the place where I understood the full weight of it. I agreed to that date as a joke. Because I thought it didn't matter. Because I thought I could walk away whenever I wanted. Because I didn't think he would become someone I'd actually care about. I was wrong. And by the time I realized that, he had already been there. Already all in. And somewhere along the way, we missed each other. Not completely. Not tragically. Just enough. Enough for it to matter. Enough for it to hurt. Enough to regret. Not him. Just the timing.